Why, hello. Today's Tuesday. Tuesday, wherever you guys are dialing in from. I'm going to do a quick audio check. Let me know if everything sounds good from yours ends. Let me close out some of these windows here. Think everything looks good on my side, but just let me know if you're hearing any echo or if there's any delay in the sound. We'll go ahead and get started then, and let me know if you guys have any audio issues as we keep going. My name's Tyler, and I'm here calling in from San Francisco, California. This is where Julius AI's headquarters is. If you're first time viewer, or if this is your first time dialing in, this is our weekly onboarding webinar. We'll go through all of the basics from what is Julius, how to get the most out of Julius, and then how to actually get started, the different tools that we have built out, and how to use them, especially if this is your first time getting started. We do these webinars twice a week. We have them all recorded in our YouTube channel that you could see here. You could look on our live and you could see all of our past webinar recordings as well as our upcoming webinars too. You can also check out our Luma. That's how most of you, I imagine, RSVP'd for this. That's where we also have our upcoming webinars that we've scheduled throughout the next couple of weeks. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to switch over my screen here to my demo window. If this is your first time ever hearing about Julius, Julius is your AI data analyst. And that means a couple of things. First, you could ask it any questions that you would normally ask a data analyst. You could expect it to have all of the context, all of the different skills to do any data analyst work, from basic queries, more advanced queries, and even things like visualizations too. And the other cool thing about Julius is it's not just an AI data analyst. It can give you insights about your data. And that's really what I think is the more valuable point. You could really connect your data in many different ways and use Julius to either help you figure out the insights that you're looking for, or to work with you and to dive into your data as you're working alongside it too. All of which we'll cover today. Basically, what we see here is a subtitle: connect your data, ask questions in plain English, get insights in seconds, no coding required. And we'll walk through all of that in today's session. To get started, you don't need to pay for an account. You can just sign up for free. There's several different methods that you could use, from Google, Apple, and just using your regular old email. And right now I'm just going to click login and use the email that I have already signed up with here, which is my Gmail account. Every single new account will get 15 free messages at the start of every month. We'll talk about what a message is, but that means that you could just sign up and get started right away. And it'll bring you to this UI here. This is essentially our chat UI, very similar to any other tool that you might have used to chat with or work with an LLM or work with an AI agent. Here, we'll just simply upload our data and we'll chat with it with Julius and analyze it together. So what I'm going to click here on the plus button. Here we see the different ways that we could connect or add in our files. The most basic way that you can use to get started is by just clicking upload file, right? This will open up a window for you to select any sort of file, from CSVs, Excel files, PDFs, JSONs, you name it. Julius can handle it all. In this example, I'm going to just upload and start with, let's say, let me go to a different folder actually. We'll go to my datasets folder. I have quite a bit here. And we'll do these data sets. Let me choose one that I think is interesting. We'll do these 4 here. I'm going to select 4 different files. These are similar to if you're running maybe like a drop shipping business. So I'll have things like my sales, products, inventory, and maybe some information about customers. And here you can see I could actually upload multiple files at the same time. Once I select those, Julius is going to go ahead and upload those right into the system here that we can see. All right. And once you add in those files, you'll see Julius had loaded up a table. And this shows all the different columns and rows for a sample of those rows in that table that we see there. So a little bit of a preview of what data we're working with. Let's just dive right into it. I'll say, let's load and preview the data, and just press enter to type this in. A few things are going to happen right now. Julius is going to think through, hey, what's the best way for me to fulfill that prompt? Then it's going to write out some Python code that it's going to run inside of this environment. There's a lot of different words there, so I'll walk through it all from the start. Python, simple coding language. You don't need to know how to write Python. Julius knows how to do it for you. And likewise, whenever it runs into any errors, Julius will work on resolving those and fixing them in real time too. Julius will write the code out, and then we'll actually run it, which means it's going to execute the code similar to like you execute or run a program in your computer. Here it's going to do it in order for it to load and preview the data that I just uploaded. I talked about our environment. This is our environment here. You can imagine it like a virtual computer, if you will. We have dedicated processing power as well as dedicated memory that Julius will use as you're working alongside it. All right, so Julius is done generating the code that we saw up here. And then now it printed out or ran those results inside of this environment. And here we could see it loaded the sales, product catalog, inventory movement, and also customer demographics tables. You also see this here in the right-hand panel. This is a very handy panel when you're first getting started using Julius. This basically has all of those different tables loaded up on the right-hand side. This is very useful for just checking the work that Julius is doing. Maybe you want to look at the data yourself while Julius is either manipulating it or doing calculations on it or even filtering it. You can see all of those here in the side panel to work alongside Julius. Let's start with the next prompt. Let's say, look for any interesting trends or insights. Again, these are very high-level prompts, right? And again, you could use Julius to answer some of these very vague, high-level exploratory questions. So we'll see what it does here. Again, Julius is going to think through what's the best way for it to solve that question. It's going to write out the Python code to fulfill that question. It's going to run it inside of my environment, and then it's going to show me the results. And that's essentially what I call like the analysis loop that happens with Julius. You go from asking a question, Julius will think through how to solve it, it'll run the code, and then it'll give you the results out afterwards. Much like if you were to ask any other person a similar question too, whether it's a data analyst or anyone on your team. All right, we'll see how these print out. And I mentioned messages earlier. Again, every free account comes with 15 free messages that restarts at the beginning of the month. Basically, each one of those times I type to Julius, that counts as one message, if you will. We have several other plans available too. If you want to test them out, you can. After this webinar, I'll actually send out a code via email to all of the people who attended as a thank you for joining. And this will give you a free week of Pro on us. And this will give you unlimited messages, ability to look at some of our different models that we have available, which I'll talk about, as well as some of the more advanced features that I'll talk about too. All right, so it looks like Julius is still generating some Python out. What Julius is doing now, and I could tell from looking at some of these explanations, is it's creating some tables for it to analyze and look for those insights. And then on this one here, it looks like it's generating visualizations that we see here as well. So let's scroll up. Here I see Julius is done joining or looking through all of those 4 different files that I had uploaded. And we see some overall business metrics, including revenue and profit. We see key insights. So we see some products by revenue. We see category by revenue and profit. And then also revenue by region too. So 4 different ways for Julius to visualize some things that I found interesting about our data. And then we see some additional, more in-depth insights too. So product performance, here's some really good clear winners in terms of revenue and total profit, category performance, and even things like customer demographics too. So far, those 2 prompts that I just sent to Julius were very, very high level. But let's imagine we wanted to really dive deeper. Let's say I want to know which products I should sell or optimize for the 35 to 45 age group. A little bit more of an in-depth question, something that you might ask maybe a data analyst on your team or someone on the analytics team at your company. So we'll ask that same question here with Julius. Awesome. While this is going, let me talk through some of the other basic features that we have here at Julius. On the bottom right-hand side, this is probably the most used feature, which is changing the different models that you have available. By default, the free accounts and anyone that signs up will have access to what we call the default model. This is a mixture of both GPT-5 and Claude's 4.5, depending on what you're trying to do and demand at the time. But again, if you're subscribed to Plus or Pro, you could select from any of these models and also some of the older models like O3 and Claude 4 Opus as well. A common question that we get is, hey, what model should I use? And in my opinion, it's all up to your opinion, right? There really is no set right or wrong answer there. It depends on what you're trying to do and your own personal preference. Anecdotally, I personally like Claude 4.5's visualizations. I think it does a really good job at visualizing data and doing some really in-depth analysis. But I also like using GPT-5 for just really in-depth work too. I think just give it a try and just see the different models and see the different ways that Julius will output the results based off of the model that you select too. It really does depend though. Let's scroll back up here. We see Julius starting to print out some results. And look at this. This is a pretty cool visualization. Here we see the product performance for that age group that I defined earlier. And here we could see Julius had thought through, hey, there's some things that you might find are some clear winners and ones that we should be focusing on, ones that are problematic, and ones that might be right on the cusp of being a hidden gem or maybe one that's I don't know how to define a cash cow, but that's kind of an interesting way for it to visualize these and maybe some ways that we could dive deeper into our data. We even see ones for product performance specifically. So we see phone stands, LED lamps, and travel backpacks. And we even see product affinity as well. It's kind of an interesting way to think about what products to optimize for. Again, this is a little bit more of an in-depth question, right? I think any of the work that you're doing with Julius, I've seen can be both high level, like if you're really just exploring data and you're not sure what patterns or what trends are there. Or maybe you're working with data that you're an expert in and you really are familiar with it. Maybe you're in this data every day, working in an Excel spreadsheet or a Google sheet, right? And you really know the ins and outs of the data. In that case, you could really dive deep in some of those into the data, just trying to figure out what you're trying to do or the analysis you're trying to do, or even the visualization that you're trying to create as well. If you're not sure, like myself, what you want to do, or if you're just exploring the data, we do have this thing on the bottom called suggestions. These are some suggested prompts that Julius had already taken a look at our data and is like, hey, this might be an interesting question to ask or to dive into. So let's try this one here. Let's try what promotion should run for best impact, and we'll see how this goes. While this runs, I'm going to plug something into the camera before it turns off really quickly here. Don't want the camera to overheat on us. Cool. While this is going, let me talk about some other features that we have built out into Julius that are very common for at least first time or newer users of Julius. We have some basic things called connectors. This is an easy way for you to connect data to Julius without needing to upload the files manually. I'd say for folks joining this call, the best ones to try out are things like Google Drive, OneDrive, and SharePoint. Those are the most basic sorts of connectors that we have. If you have your data stored in one of these places, all you have to do is simply click on this button, and you could grab the files that you want and pull them directly into Julius without needing to download them from your drive or from your OneDrive and re-uploading them into Julius. So I would say give those ones a try. If you are a marketer, like a lot of folks are on Julius, you could also connect your Google Ads and Meta Ads accounts to Julius directly. And then finally, if you're a more advanced user or you have an IT team at your university or at your organization, you could use one of these other data connectors like BigQuery, Snowflake, Postgres, etc., depending on where your data lives. A little bit more advanced setup, but it makes it super easy to pull in the data from those connectors into Julius. If you are curious a little bit more or you want to learn more about those data connectors, we do have recurring webinars every other week on data connectors. This week we don't have it, but next week we'll be having a data connectors one. Alternatively, you could check out our previous webinar recordings and you could see the last webinar we had on data connectors, which was roughly 2 weeks ago, and where we cover setting them up and how to actually use them too. Awesome. Let's take a look at what Julius is going to generate here. So again, you could just look at the code explanations to take a look at what Julius is doing with this code. If you're non-technical like myself and can't read Python, it's a good way for you just to see like, hey, what's Julius actually doing? And again, if Julius runs into any errors or the code just doesn't quite work out, it'll just keep on trying to solve it. It'll write new code and try to debug what happened or what went wrong with the code that I wrote. All right, so it looks like we're pretty close there. Just going to start printing out some results shortly, I can see. All right, here we go. All right, and again, this was using the suggested prompt. And again, my question that I had asked Julius was, when should promotions run for best impact? So maybe you're trying to understand when you should run certain coupons, certain sales, or certain promotions, right? Here we have a breakdown based off of day of the week, specific months. There might be some seasonality to this data set. Looks like some specific days of the week based off of category. Kind of a funny looking chart. And then also, even for this age group, when the best time of day is to, or the best day of the week is to run a sale. It's pretty cool. I really do enjoy using the suggested prompts, especially when I'm not sure where I want to go with my analysis or if I'm doing some more exploratory analysis. Speaking of visualizations, let's talk through our chart themes. If you go into tools here on the bottom, and you'll see on the left-hand side some of the different what we call chart themes. These are ways that you could customize the way that Julius visualizes your data. Here we have some pre-built ones from our Julius scientific, business, and even an interactive and dark theme. If none of these really fit what you're looking for, you can create your own theme, and you could set all the different things from the different colors, the secondary colors, and even very specific things about the visualizations and charts too, from line weights, error bars, even things like plot area, reference lines. And you can even do ones that you can't see it here, but if you just keep on clicking this, it'll cycle through things like your font and the ways that you visualize the chart too. So that adds in a whole level of customizability here, especially if you have specific requirements for how you need to format your visualizations, whether you're writing for a research paper or maybe for your organization. If they have specific branding guidelines, you could add them in there too. While we're in this panel, let me talk through some of the other really basic features. We have Customize Julius. This is a set of custom instructions that you could add in. And Julius will keep this with it wherever it works. You can give it specific context, or you can give it, specific rules or even things that you want it to do whenever you're working with Julius. So whether there's really specific ways you want to visualize things, or if you want Julius to, I think this is a leftover from my previous webinar, but if you want to have specific use cases, right? Hey, maybe you're teaching a course about SPSS, you could add that in here. Maybe you want Julius to respond to you in Spanish, you could add that in here too. So you could think of it like a separate set of instructions that Julius will refer to whenever you're working alongside it. I mentioned the specific resources that Julius has, from the memory and the processing power. All free accounts will have a standard container, but you can expand this with our Pro and our Plus accounts too. You could expand it to have a longer lifespan, so the files in memory will last longer. And you could even have it where it has even more processing power too. And then finally, the last one is we'll talk about not data connectors, secret keys. This is the one. Very common question we get from folks is, can I use Julius? Can I pull maybe my data from an API, or if there's a public API out there, can I pull that data into Julius? And the answer is yeah, you can. You could simply use the secret keys feature here, title the name of it, and then add in the API key. And then Julius will refer to it in a very secure way without exposing those keys in the chat. Really handy for using either a public API. For example, there's a lot of finance ones or sports related ones out there, or stock related ones. You could pull that all in. And likewise, if your data is stored or accessible via an API, or using an app that has an API, you can pull it in this way too. Cool. Let me scroll up a little bit here, and let's talk about this last really key feature. Imagine we're done with our analysis, right? A lot of times you're working with Julius and you dove into the data, you wanted it to do a specific type of analysis, or maybe even just do exploratory analysis, and now you want to share the results, right? How do you actually do this? When you click on share, you could see very basic ways that you could share either a direct link to this chat specifically. So you can copy the link here. You could make the chat visible for anyone with a link to view. And then likewise, if you're on a team, you could share it to make it accessible to everyone that's on your team with you, right? That's one way that you could do this. Alternatively, one of my favorite ways is by clicking on the Generate Analysis Report. What this will do is it's going to generate a report. That means it's going to take away all of the different prompts, so all the questions that I had asked Julius. It's going to take away all of the different code that Julius had wrote and executed. And it's actually going to summarize all of the different findings and keep all of the key visualizations that we had. Really handy for something, for creating something that is more shareable and more consumable than seeing, like the raw analysis or just the raw code itself. So we've seen from enterprise users, this is really handy for sending out via an email or by sharing in Slack, for example. But here we could see the summary of the analysis, as well as some of the tables as well for this analysis here. The really cool thing that you could do is you could also edit this. This is all Markdown, so you could change any of the summary, or you could add in any additional context that you want. And you could simply download this as a PDF, something that you could just share. That looked funny because I'm still in the editing mode, but if you click save and then you click download, you'll see the more shareable, friendly PDF there too. And the last main way that you could also share is by let me see here. You could either download the actual report here. There's another way. So you could download as a PDF or a docx or as Jupyter Notebook. And the other way that you could also do this is by scheduling it, right? So if I click on schedule, you could actually have this analysis run again and again. So maybe you're supposed to do a specific type of analysis or generate a specific type of report every week. You could have that analysis generated, ran either daily, weekly, or monthly. And the really cool thing that you could do is actually connect this to your Slack. This way you could have the analysis sent directly to Slack into a specific channel that you specify whenever that report is generated and run too. So really handy when you need to do maybe like daily, weekly, or even monthly reporting. We've seen from enterprise users that just having it delivered to Slack, having the visualizations and charts show up every week, really, really handy there too. On this page, you can see all of the other different connectors that we have, in addition to the ones that I've spoken about earlier. We also have things for Databricks, MySQL, SQL Server, for example. And then we also have ones for popular apps too, which are accessible via what we call MCPs, or Model Context Protocol. You could connect your Stripe, you could connect things like your Zapier, Intercom, and even things like GitHub too, to access that data directly in Julius, and then even do things in those apps via Julius too. So really, really handy there. Lastly, there's a couple of resources that we have available to you. We have we have in here on the top left, all the different ways that you could, sorry, I'm not going the right area. If you go to, I'm going to exit out of this page. It's kind of different. There's a documents page. Let me see here. Okay, so here on the bottom left, there's a question mark icon, and you could just click on documentation. This has all of our docs related to Julius, from all the different features, like our notebooks, or even things like our Teams features, and even data connectors, which I was just talking about, all visible here. You could also click on our quick start guide, has some videos here as well on how to get started, and simply upload some files into Julius and start to get your analysis kick-started. And then we also have a couple other resources too. We have our Slack channel. This is a place for you, our Julius community. You can join this, ask questions as needed, and you can get a lot of help there too. And also a good way to check out the different work that the team's been doing, and also what work people are doing in the Julius community. Really handy. We just set this up maybe a few months ago too, so it's starting to grow and pick backup speed there too. We also have our blog, has a lot of different announcements. Right now, we're in the middle of our first ever launch week. So you can see all the different product releases and things that are coming out from the Julius team here. We have our trust center. Really common question that we get from folks is, how do you handle my data? Where does my data go? I'm uploading this. Who controls the data? All those questions can be answered here in our trust center. And then you could even get access to our security one-pager as well as our SOC 2 Type 2 report. And you can see our status on compliance for popular industry standard compliance like SOC 2 Type 2 and GDPR as well. If you have any security-related questions, or maybe someone on your team has some specific data or security-related questions, feel free to share them the link to this page. And also you could give them the email address security@julius.ai, and we'll respond and answer any questions that you have as well. Okay, so that is our docs. That is our, what did I cover? Those docs. That is our trust center, community Slack. And the last thing I'll show is the notebooks templates. You can think of notebooks as a little bit more advanced way of using Julius. It's a good way to rerun analysis and to iterate over time on analysis. But the other really cool thing about notebooks is you can create templates and share templates too. And we have this library here on julius.ai/notebook/explore, or just able to click it here in the side panel. This has a whole bunch of different use cases and things that the team has built and ran on Julius, from acquisition channel efficiency analysis, significance testing analysis, and even some really basic things like cleaning my data and restructuring my data, or doing some correlation analysis. All you have to do is simply click one of these, run the notebook, and then Julius will have the analysis all ready for you to go. You just have to plug in your data and run it. We have a webinar coming up this Thursday on notebooks specifically to talk through, hey, how do I actually create a notebook from start to finish? What even is a notebook? So feel free to join that one too. It'll be a really exciting session. Likewise, you could tune in to our previous webinars that we've had on notebooks. We have one in our YouTube channel here as well. You can check it out in our YouTube under live, and you can see all the previous webinars that we've recorded too. I think that's mostly the basics I wanted to cover. Let me just double check I didn't forget anything super basic. Okay, let's talk through two more of these settings I realized I forgot to mention. I'll go back to my chat here. On the bottom, we see a couple of buttons here that are available. We have one for memory. This helps give Julius even bigger, what we call context window. Normally, when you're working on Julius within the same day, it's generally not going to have any issues. But if you're using Julius to work on the same project across multiple weeks, or even maybe months, and definitely across multiple sessions, you could use the extended memory to give Julius even more visibility into those chats, keep that context over time, and keep any things like your formulas, specific business context or use case in mind when you're working alongside it. So very handy to toggle this on. The other one that we have here is what we call advanced reasoning. You can enable this, and if you ever do a really, really complex prompt, Julius is going to break it down into more bite-sized steps for it to handle instead of trying to do it all in one go. So what I'll do here is I'll write something really, really complex. We'll say, I want to create a logistic regression model to predict when I should optimize certain products for certain demographics. Pretty complex. It's pretty broad also. Demographics. And what prices I should use to help optimize sales in the future, right? Normally, I would recommend breaking this up into more bite-sized chunks, and that's actually something we cover in our prompting guide that I'll share after this call in the email. But whenever you do something with the advanced reasoning, the cool thing is you could toggle on the right side panel, and you'll see Julius come up with a really in-depth plan for how it's going to tackle that data set. So here you can see it's going to load and inspect it, merge and clean the data, define and target and engineer the features, train and validate the logistic regression model, then start to do the estimates and then validate those results. So pretty much if you're putting on your machine learning hat. This is something that a normal ML engineer will try to do, or a data scientist will do when they're trying to train a model. And here Julius is going to run through all the different steps it needs to in order to accomplish this there. Cool thing is if it runs into any issues or any errors, it's going to pop up this really dark red X, and it's going to revalidate or readjust its plan to tackle what it's trying to do here too. So we'll take a look. But again, I would recommend not trying to just one-shot things, especially if you are not in too big of a rush. It really is helpful to take it in more bite-sized steps as well. We do have that prompting guide and best practices guide that I'll share afterwards. Has all the things that we covered in today's webinar, including some additional best practices for how to work with Julius, how to structure data correctly, and even how to prompt in a way that's more effective. A lot of the prompts I did today were pretty high level. Nothing wrong with doing that, but if you're working more in the weeds, as if you were working with a regular with a regular data analyst, it is more helpful to give Julius more business context or more use case context too, all of which I cover in that prompting guide. Awesome. So we see Julius working through the steps. It's merging and cleaning the data, and it's going to work through all of those in order to tackle it. And that's essentially what advanced reasoning is. While I take a pause, any questions from folks or anything top of mind that might be helpful for me to cover in today's webinar? All right. The other things that I'll talk about while I have y'all here, you'll see the code. If you are a little bit more technical and you want to make updates to this code, easiest way to do this is actually just click on edit code, and you can update it there as well. The other cool thing you could do is you can copy, you could rerun code, and you can even paste in code that you've generated either previously using Julius or code that Julius has, that you have generated using things like ChatGPT, Anthropic, like Claude, for example, and some of the other tools that are out there. Looks like we're almost there. It's pretty beefy prompt, as you can imagine from the different steps that we asked it to do, but it's making its way through it. But again, I would recommend doing it in more bite-sized chunks and even doing it in a notebook, something that we'll talk through on Thursday. Looks like we're almost there. A couple other features that we'll talk about in the future webinars with custom agents. It's a brand new feature that we're starting to work on, but we released. We'll walk through how to set that up. And then likewise, things like our data connectors we'll cover in another webinar. And then the other last one I'll talk about is our query tool, which we'll also cover in another webinar. All right, looks like we're almost there, and then we'll let this generate. But if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out. The other place that you could reach out to us is by clicking on the question mark here, and then clicking on, not that button, clicking on help here in the upper right-hand corner. This will open up our intercom. If you have any questions about billing, product issues, account issues, things like that, you could create a ticket here. Alternatively, you could reach out to us at team@julius.ai, and then we'll get back to you to answer any of the questions that you have, or if there's any help that you need specifically. All right. Not surprised that this one took a little bit of time. It is a pretty in-depth prompt that I gave to Julius, but it looks like we're just about to filter and print out the results here too. I'd be curious to see. All of this data that I've been using today has been synthetic, so I wouldn't be surprised if it looks kind of funny. But that being said, you could use Julius for any number of use cases, whether it's real data, synthetic data, or even asking it to generate data for you too. Very, very handy for it to process and create those tables for us. Okay, let's take a look here. Looks like we're almost done. Maybe one more table for it to do. There, and we'll see how this goes. Cool. Let me see. Anything else that I didn't cover? I think that was mostly it for getting started. It is quite a bit of information, but again, we do record these webinars so you can refer to them as needed inside of our YouTube, and then also stay tuned for our upcoming webinars that we'll be planning out shortly. And again, yeah, really excited for this launch week. I think that's the other really cool thing that we have going on. Team's been really hard at work building out these data connectors that I was talking about earlier. Really common for either users, whether they're at an organization or at a university, for example, and having their data live somewhere, right? I think our data lives somewhere at Julius. All my previous companies I've worked at, their data lives somewhere. And all these big enterprises, their data all lives somewhere, right? So really handy way for you to meet you where your data is. So just yesterday and today, we announced our SQL Server and MySQL connectors. And it's really easy for you to just pull data from those data warehouses right into Julius to do the analysis too. Can you make an example on how to draw a research model my previous analysis? How to draw a research modeling based off of your previous analysis, if I'm understanding correctly? So if you have an analysis that you've done previously, if it's outside of Julius and you have it maybe in an Excel spreadsheet, or maybe you have a PDF, or maybe you have it in a Jupyter notebook, all three of those you could upload to Julius, and then Julius will take a look there. If you want Julius to build off of the work that you've done previously, or you wanted to create a model based off of something that you've done previously too, it is helpful to give Julius that additional context. Add in any flavor or specific context about what work you were trying to do or the specific use case. That's really helpful. And if there's a specific type of, if you're thinking like a ML model, you could tell it to generate those types of models too, if I'm understanding correctly. Okay. In this case, I asked it to create a logistic regression model, pretty basic way for it to just create some way to forecast or estimate ways that we could optimize what I was looking for earlier, which was our products based off of demographics and prices for optimizing sales. So here we see Julius had created and trained a model based off of some features. So things like discounts, age, weekend sales, and even things like quantity to identify maybe this something that might influence the model. The predictions here in the confusion matrix, which actually doesn't seem too bad, actually. And then also model performance too. And then here you can see the model accuracy, the ability for it to, predict whether something might be a good indicator of score or bad indicator to use for optimizing on our sales there too. So things like our quantity drives high value purchases. Age groups are significant. Product types are also significant. And then here, Julius had created some optimal pricing strategies as well. And even things like day of the week, taking a look at our sales. What are the best times for us? Kind of interesting. Maybe on Wednesday, we sell more noise canceling earbuds or something. Again, this data is all synthetic, so it's not too surprising. It's kind of funny sounding. But there are some insights here too, and also some actionable recommendations that Julius had come up with. Here you even see some strategic insights. All of this done, again, by using simply the advanced reasoning feature to do a one-shot there as well. Cool. And then, want to ask analysis. Jacob's asking, if my data changes, can the code rerun on the updated data in Julius automatically? Or if I want to rerun it on a filtered view of the data, for example? Yeah, it can, right? I would say the challenge there is it's hard to do that with manual upload, right? So if you're uploading a CSV that's been updated, it's a little bit more friction in that process because you'll yourself have to update that data, right? So you have to upload it, again, select the file, and add in the updated data set there. The more optimal way to do it, though, is by using our data connectors, right? I actually I have enough time here to do a preview of this. If you just connect, for example, to where the data lives. So if I go to create here, I go to my connectors and I click on my Postgres connector. If the data is already being updated inside of this data warehouse, so Postgres, for example, data warehouse has all of these different tables and different columns that get updated as users interact with my product, for example, or as I'm logging it inside of this data warehouse. Then all you have to do is just ask that same question that you did before. So maybe check for how my sales vary based on store, for example. The cool thing here is not necessarily with threads, but with our notebooks feature, you could build the analysis that you want to do over and over again. And then you could simply connect it to the data connector and then it'll run automatically. This way, whenever the data is updated, it'll run based off of that new up-to-date data. Really common for folks that have their data living in like Snowflake, BigQuery, or even things like Postgres or even Supabase. We have a lot of people building apps on things like Lovable or on Replit and have a Supabase connector. They could update the data automatically. Live data lives inside of those data warehouses. They pull it into Julius. Julius here, as you can see, will write a query in order to pull that data in, and then it'll do the analysis using fresh data. So that's one way as well. So yeah, that's one way. And we do this internally ourselves to be transparent. We have our data that lives inside of a data warehouse, and then we have our own analysis that runs every day, pulling directly from that data source too. And if you want to do it on a filtered view, one cool thing that you could do inside of a notebook, for example, is to filter it. You could say, hey, I want to solely filter or focus on sales from the last 6 months or something, right? This way it'll take the live data, it'll write and adjust the query to only pull from the most recent 6 months, and then it'll use that to do the analysis or generate any visualizations there too. So yeah, if that answers your question. But again, I would say if you do want to pull from live data, best way to do it is by using the data connectors, especially if we do support the data connector or warehouse that you have your data stored at. We talk about this more in depth, but one other thing I'll touch on here is as you continue to use the data over time or use that data connector over time, Julius will actually learn about the different tables, different columns, and the different ways that you join those tables and columns together, right? You imagine if you were like a data analyst at a company and they need to do the same analysis that you're looking for, right? They'll have to know, this table is where we store our users' data. This table is where we store our sales data, right? And then this is the relationship between tables, so you could join those together. Well, Julius has to do the same thing, and that's why we have what we call learned information. So that way you could do those joins and all the different relationship between your tables and schemas on its own too. So that's one way there. But give it a shot. Again, you can check out all the different data connectors that we have available here that let you pull in the fresh data. If you don't see one that you have your data stored in, just simply use the request form here, and then you can type in the type of data connector or warehouse, and we'll add it in or add it to our roadmap as well. Cool. Any last minute questions? I hope that was helpful. Again, we do these webinars. We'll look forward to seeing you guys on the Thursday webinar where we'll dive into notebooks more in depth. We'll talk a little bit more about these data connectors too. I'll show you guys how to set up a live notebook that you could use to refresh over and over again and get the results delivered straight to your Slack or even your email address too. And we'll walk through it from there. I want to say thank you so much for joining. We'll see you guys in the next webinar. Hope you have a great rest of your evening, morning, or night, depending where you are dialing in from. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.